I need a vacation, and you'll learn why during this talk, which is story time with Maddy, as I'm calling it now. I was looking at the schedule when I started making these slides, and I know a couple months ago, Gerald was like, do you want to like end of the day keynote what's going to be the final Xamarin Expert Day? And I was like, sure. Sounds like kind of like a big deal. I don't know what I can talk about, but I have no idea what will be out in 3-4 months. And he was like, nah, we'll figure it out. So I was like, what I want to do is talk a little bit about, how we got kind of where we are. Because I was looking at the sessions today and I was like, how in God's name am I going to show anything better than the things on here? Like, I could demo everything I know how to demo and I wouldn't even like scrape the surface of some of the talks on here. So I'm like, literally like, why watch me code when you can just go back and watch all these videos? Which is what I'm going to do after this. I'm actually going to go back and rewatch most of this event because I missed so much of it because I was sleeping. So I've decided to rename my talk to a behind the scenes look at the absurdity of shipping Maui this past year and a half. Because I can't tell you the expertise that Javier can tell you about handlers, or that Rendy and Charlene can tell you about UX, or that Rachel can tell you about accessibility. But I can tell you what's been going on behind the scenes, which has been a wild ride. And I hope you find this as enjoyable to listen to as I found it was putting together. So let's see. First of all, who am I? I have no idea how I got here. That is like the TLDR of my life. When I was in school, I know Dave in his talk was like, yeah, I ran my own company and I'm doing .NET for forever and I'm old. My story is more like I went to college and I was like, computers are cool. I'm going to go build robots. No, I'm going to go build GPUs. I am going to tell you via memes, John. Yes, thank you. I'm glad you know telepathically that this half of the content of this presentation is actually memes. So that's good. I thought I was going to work on supercomputing. I thought I was going to work on, all these things. And then I was like, I'm going to be a software engineer. And then I did a couple software engineering internships. One was at Microsoft. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm going to be a software engineer. Can't do this. But I really like it. But I don't like doing it for like a long time every day. I like doing it for like a couple hours and then being like, look at this thing I built. And then going off and being like, okay, new thing, which is, rough. So then I found out what PM was. I decided that's kind of something I'd be interested in. I decided that I wanted to stay in tech and in software adjacent. And somehow I ended up on this team. I don't know. It was like a lot of lucky moments and people taking chances on me. Yes, that is a pajama party in the bottom right. That's in the Microsoft office in Cambridge. If you told me 3.5 years ago that I would be hanging out with James Montemagno, who has a bajillion Twitter followers in some like really legit looking studio in Redmond, I would be like, absolutely no. Nope. But this way, here we are. So long before my time, long before I was part of this team, there was this thing in this company where basically my skip manager, Joseph, was told that if he wanted to work with his friend Miguel on his friend Miguel's side project, they needed to figure out how to make money for it. And that is, I know so little about this story because I was not part of the .NET world back in these days, but it was new. And Mono, if you go look at the Wikipedia page, you'll learn more about Mono than I can tell you. But you've probably heard of it because it was really the foundation of everything that we're talking about today, and everything that you saw this morning, afternoon, evening was XamExpertDay. This was around the time the iPhone came out, and they were like, use Objective-C, and people were like, absolutely not. And so Miguel and the folks who worked on Mono and Mono Touch were like, why don't we just make C# run on the iPhone? Perfect. Easy. Yeah, that's just great. Phones aren't going to be like the next big thing, but it's fine. We'll just like make this work. This Mono developed thing. And so they did that. And people were like, hey, this is actually really cool. Like .NET's the thing that enterprises use, and we don't have to learn Objective-C. So perfect. And phones back then. I love this picture because I remember having, my friend had this phone. I didn't have this phone. No. But I remember my friend got it and I was like, this is the coolest thing in the entire world. Like, my phone still vibrated every time you touch something like on that's like the little bad flip phone touchscreen. It was awful. Yeah, in the chat, people are like, Mono Touch, my on-ramp. Yes, you all have like all this expertise from when I was just like, oh, I like stupid phone games. This is around the time, 2008, 2009, 2010, where companies were like, oh man, we can make money from this. Like, people are going to keep buying these phone things, and we could probably build these app things and then make some money, right? Shazam Classic. Every time I was anywhere, I used it. Thought it was really cool. This is one of my favorite examples of apps from the late 2000s. The $1,000 app that literally just existed so that you could say you paid $1,000 for an app. People bought this. Like, this is real. And that was not a good looking app. I know we talk all about design these days, but no, not worth $1,000. Also, people got really creative. This was from an article called 31 Fart Apps in 90 Seconds. So these are the things that people were building. And some of these were built, of course, with MonoTouch. Some were built with Objective-C. Android was kind of on the scene. People didn't think it was as cool. As an Android user, I know Android has always been the coolest, but whatever. Yeah. And so Xamarin kind of evolved from MonoTouch, and we were like, hey, people really like this, and there are all these different phones, and we should probably, continue to make it easy to build apps for these mobile devices. And that's kind of when Xamarin Forms came out, because we were like, and by we, I mean the people before me, were like, hey, apps are pretty simple looking. Like, this $1,000 app is just a button. Cool. Well, why don't we just make it easy to put data into an app and then, just ship it. Great. That's not going to be a big deal or anything. And that was Xamarin Forms, which I think in hindsight, we might realize that Xamarin Forms was actually a really good idea and was totally going to be a big deal. Stories with Aunt Maddy is a sellable format. I like that. Yeah, everyone here, except probably for me, was not part of this. So yeah, we were like, Xamarin Forms should be great. Really smart people working on it. Really chill, no big deal. Android, iOS, Windows Phone, that thing that existed. And then it kind of took off. And Microsoft was like, okay, we open source .NET. We don't need this mono guy doing, all this stuff without us. Let's just buy him. And so Microsoft bought Xamarin. Which was, I think, I was an intern. I remember I was an intern in the Cambridge office. Cambridge, Mass office, and my boss said, no way. They're hiring this cool startup to come work for us. And I was like, what is Xamarin? That sounds like an anti-anxiety medication. Like, I have no idea what that word you just said is. I know what C# is. I know what UWP is. I know what an Android is, but like, what is this thing? And he was like, no, they're really cool. They're really cool guys and girls and people. And they are like really fun, and it's going to be awesome for them to come join the office. They're like a startup. They're fun. And I was like, cool. Yeah, Microsoft is cool and fun. And this was over 5 years ago. And sure enough, I came back for the next summer, and Xamarin was there. They were actually sitting next to where all the interns sat, the people who were in Boston. So my manager now, Chris, who may or may not be in the chat, hi Chris, heard us all like screaming at each other when we were interns. And we had scooters and we made a lot of noise, and people were on calls all the time because Xamarin has always been a remote team and knows what they're doing. And then there were these interns in the background that were like making noise, and everyone was like, we hate you. And I was like, that's the team I want to go work on. They seem really cool. Maybe I'll go work on that thing. So I tried to figure out what Xamarin was and what mobile was and what .NET was. And I kind of did. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like fun. So how I got the job, whole other story. Not going to get into that. But while all this craziness was happening, phones were also growing up. I don't know if you've noticed that in the past 13 years, the iPhone has taken a little bit of a glow up. And this is from a slide that this is a slide taken out of one of Miguel's presentations when he announced 1.NET at MVP Summit like 2018. So we've gone even further than this. I just did not feel like Googling the iPhone, whatever stats we're on now. But phones have really glowed up. And so the way that we build mobile apps has also glowed up. Design is kind of important. If you look at I use this example all the time. The settings page from the original iPhone, we thought this was the pinnacle of design. This was like not even 15 years ago. And everyone was like, look at these switches. Oh my gosh. When it's on, it has a different color background. And now we're like, no, clean, modern, not everything is just nice, simple. And I'm sure we're going to go the other way. If you look at home decor and fashion trends, everything comes back in a style. But when Xamarin Forms started, we had from the beginning said, we're going to use the native controls because that way, as the design languages of all these operating systems and platforms and everything else, as all of those things evolved, we'd evolve naturally with it. And that made a lot of sense at the time. And it still does make a lot of sense, except we also have come into a society where people have design degrees and they're really good at designing things. And they say, I don't care what platform you're on. I want this app to look like this. So we did a bunch of Xamarin Forms when it came to the visual design system and shell, better customizations. You might remember, if you've been around for a couple of years, the F100s initiative, where we were just like fixing little paper cuts that were like, oh, make it easy to round your corners, gradients and blah, 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 all that stuff. So we've been doing a ton of work to Xamarin Forms to make it easier to adapt to the ever-changing landscape of design, but still maintaining that like underpinnings of native controls, right? And then, of course, the operating systems grew up too. It's not all about UI. I liked Shiny's, Alan's talk description about Shiny that was like, Xamarin Forms isn't just UI. Come learn about all the stuff that has to work under the hood. I was like, good point. Good point, Alan. Yeah, all these operating systems kept coming out with APIs that we had to wrap. And then people were like, why do I have to do this once on Android and once on iOS when I could just do my control in XAML and Xamarin Forms? Like, what are you guys doing? And we were like, I know what we'll do. We'll come out with the Xamarin Forms, but for device APIs, Xamarin Essentials. Perfect. And when I say we, this was like John Dick and James Montemagno. So again, I am taking credit for things that I had no business working on. So thanks, guys, because this was brilliant. And people were like, cool. Yeah, that sounds great. And we were like, awesome. Okay, cool. Our SDK is better than ever. And then we did all this tooling stuff, which is kind of where I've lived. This quote at the bottom, I like to say when I talk to customers, which is, I try to make you more productive while you're developing your Xamarin apps, but I don't always succeed at that. But I'm always trying. But you might remember things like Live Player, the Previewer, which I tried so hard to save, and people were like, just use hot reload. We built that. Dave and I were trying to work on a Maui app a couple months ago without hot reload. And I think we just like said to each other, how on earth did we either develop or demo or anything before hot reload? I don't know. I do not know. But Previewer in the chat, I know. I missed the Previewer too, but don't worry. If you saw Dave's talk, if you didn't see Dave's talk, go back and watch it. He showed a live preview, which is awesome. I know, I feel like a little bit like I'm like, okay, everybody, here's the history. But so it definitely like a little memory trip. But yeah. So there were a bunch of things we did. I mean, install size was a big one. We went from like 23 gigs to 8 gigs in Visual Studio, which is made it so much easier to get started. Of course, we've gone through quite a few different editions of Visual Studio at this point. We got faster. VS Mac has been like piece by piece overhauled. The XAML and IntelliSense, we just like ripped out and plugged in the one on Windows. All these different things. and I mean, VS Mac, if you've been following the news with them for VS 2022, they are like completely rebuilding it from the ground up for the UI. It's awesome. So lots of stuff that has been going on the past few years. So this is like, yes, Dave, great comment. This is what you would get at the bar, except I would have more of a Boston accent. I'm trying to keep it cool for the chat. So this is kind of what we felt like in 2019. We were like, this is great. We have done all this stuff. We completely like redid Xamarin Forms. We have Xamarin Essentials now. Tooling is the best it has ever been. We had the Xamarin Developer Summit in Houston, and it was a huge party, and everyone was like, yeah, like Xamarin's the best it's been in since it came out, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, reality was also kind of like, everything was also kind of a mess, because we had basically gone off and built all this amazing stuff and never really taken a step back to look at the story. Or taking a step back to look at how they all fit together. And we were still working adjacent to .NET at this time. We were really like our own thing. And we were having a hard time explaining why Xamarin was modern, why it was stacking up with the latest technologies, all these things, without kind of being like confusing. I don't know. It was confusing. You can ask Dave too. We would talk to customers and they'd be like, so you guys did all this stuff. What's the vision? And we were like, just keep doing all this stuff because we're great. Yeah, which felt a little like weird and sometimes disingenuous. So February 2020, I am in Redmond. No idea what's coming. And these two geniuses here, Dave and James, are standing in the corner, also I think with James Clancy, and chatting. And I come up and I'm like, hey guys, what's up? And they're like, oh, who invited Maddy? Just kidding. They are like, hey guys, what's up? And I'm like, what's going on? And they were like, we have this great idea. We are going to figure out how to make Xamarin fit in with the one.NET story. Because at this point, we had already determined that like Mono and .NET were going to come together. We had determined that the runtimes were going to kind of start smushing, and you know, we had been reorganized a bit internally to fit within the .NET org a little bit more. So these two geniuses are like, we have the best idea, right? Bam, Project Rockwood / Bloom / for 1 second, someone said .NET Forms, and I like was sick to my stomach. I was like, we're not naming it that. Comet was out. There were all these different ideas. And the premise of it, I remember James Montemagno wrote on a whiteboard. He said, web - Blazor. Client, which means mobile and desktop, basically, is what we call client development. - Project Rockwood. And I was like, cool, seems great. Let's do it. Awesome. We really had this awesome vision of everything was going to be on the same runtime. We were going to have all the tooling experiences unified across the .NET stack. We were going to kind of modernize the branding so that people weren't like, Xamarin, that's like what my dad used 10 years ago to build a fart app and Mono. It's like, no. Xamarin Forms is way different than it was a few years ago. All these things. And so we, you know, young us, February 2020, we were like, we'll announce it at Build this year, and then we'll share it in a couple weeks when we're all back here in Redmond at MVP Summit, and then we'll ship it in a couple months in November. Like, this is going to be great. We're having a great time, everybody. Stephen, I'm glad you also hate .NET Forms, because I'm sure you would have been consulted at some point if it made it any further than this slide. Yeah, so we were super optimistic. And as you all know, this is when we really start getting into the meme content, John. So as you all know, 2020 was a bit of a disaster. The day I was supposed to fly out for MVP Summit, my flight got canceled. So we were like, I guess we'll still talk about this thing, but like, it'll be fine. This COVID thing will last a couple weeks, and yeah, all the different stuff. And yeah, we were like, this is going to be great. We're still going to do this up until about 3 weeks before Build 2020, which was, one of the first like big production remote events we did. So you can see I really put in a lot of effort for this one, like put on some makeup. Meanwhile, now I'm like Patriots hoodie, sitting in my office. I didn't even clean up like the junk behind me. 3 weeks before Build 2020, there were 2 large events. One was we recorded the keynotes, which was when we had decided, like, do we commit to shipping Maui? Do we not commit to shipping Maui? Blah 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 blah. All right, we'll just show Xamarin in the developer keynote. We'll show how far we've come with Xamarin development. Maui will be part of the like other .NET stuff. Yes, the kitchen. I know. I was hoping everyone would recognize the kitchen. That's what it looks like from 3 feet further back than what you usually see it from. And then we also had to adjust to the changing times of the world when you're a Fortune 5 company that has a responsibility to try to adapt to all the crazy things that were happening at the time, which means we had a reorg. And we lost a third of our engineering team, including Gerald, which is why I put this over his face, not because he died. He's here. He's hosting this event.
I'm here.
He's right there. We're good. But we actually had a third of our engineering team. And it wasn't just Xamarin. It wasn't just us. It was across the org. Like, the company was like, we need to prioritize things that are going to make people adjust to how the world is changing rapidly, this new online world and blah, 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 blah. And, we're a business with investors and stakeholders. Like, how can we adapt? And that was basically just repurpose some people, which was cool. Horrible for me. I cried like 12 times because I was like, we're going to die. After like 2 days later, I was fine. But we decided there was no way we were going to be able to ship this thing in November 2020 with .NET 5. When this all happened. So we were like, okay, we'll say .NET 6. And that's what we'll say at Build. Even though we're recording these things today. We'll just change it and it's going to be great. We have all these demos. Everything's going to be awesome. Cool. So that's what we did. And then since then, we have been incredibly busy. So if you're at this event, you are probably someone who knows other ways to learn about Xamarin, whether it's through the interwebs, videos, through GitHub, through the Discord, all the things. We've been doing a bunch. And like I said at the beginning of this talk, like, I am not the best person to tell you about most of these things. There are experts that work on this stuff. But you saw John in the chat, who's probably looking at this list of SDK things and being like, this is like 1/15 of what we did. Likewise with our tooling folks who were like, we did like a bajillion things. But there's been a lot, not to mention like new iOS's shipped, new Androids shipped. WinUI has been being developed under the hood this whole time. We've been working with the Blazor team. We did the whole single project thing. We had to continue to maintain all the stuff we've been working on with Xamarin. But we've been going like hard. We're doing a great job. I like this little weightlifting .NET bot because I was like, yeah, that's us. We're like weightlifting. We're strong. We're going. Not to mention, at the same time that we're doing all of this, we're literally building the .NET 6 runtime. So we're building the SDK, the tooling, which is needed to develop the SDK, and the runtime that all of this stuff runs on at the exact same time. Which, you're like, yeah, that's a great idea. Everything's going to be built with the other thing in mind. It's not like we're going to try and retrofit a bunch of tooling onto an SDK that already exists, which, is a mistake we've made in the past. But also, it turns out that's kind of hard. And at some point, we started to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. And basically, this is what we looked like. So these are stock photos. This is not an actual picture of Dave. I know it does look just like him. But we were testing things and we were like, wow, everything is really close to being awesome. Yeah, David without makeup. I like that. And this is not, the engineering team was actually like probably even more stressed than this. We at least had enough time to like make funny faces, But we were like, this is really close to being the best thing in the entire world. This close, like super duper close. But we are not where we need to be to start encouraging people today in August 2021 to ship this, to start updating their packages for this. And we've seen some of our control vendors, right? Like Telerik and Syncfusion, which David showed earlier, doing a really great job getting ready for Maui. But, some of our open source community folks were just like, hey, I tried updating and it wasn't quite ready, or my thing's broke. Yeah, Ken, paint the bus, change the tires on the bus, and drive the bus at the same time. Exactly. Nothing can go wrong with that. Perfect. Single project, we were like, it's like done, except we can't really get the Windows stuff to work yet. So we're just going to have someone on the Maui team go and like hack on WinUI. And then, oh man, we have to go work on this other stuff. So it was just not quite the perfect click once, run everywhere experience that we wanted. And so we went to leadership and we were like, what do we do? What do we do, guys? Because .NET 6 is coming out and we don't want to ship this thing and have it be a total flop, even though we feel like we're so close to what we want this to be. So I found this picture of a Maui puzzle. Maui is in Moana, Maui, played by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And I thought that was very funny because this is kind of what it's felt like the past couple of weeks. Like as recently as this week, we are taking a bunch of puzzle pieces that we dumped into, like we took 5 or 6 different puzzles, right? The runtime puzzle, the SDK puzzle, and the tooling puzzle. We dumped them all into the same box. And then we're trying to put them all back together without making a total mess. It's definitely been interesting. But we're really close. And so you've probably seen more momentum when it comes to even like the demos you saw today. When it comes to control vendors showing what they've been working on, when it comes to the upgrade assistant work we've been doing, the API is pretty stable at this point. If you just look at what we're doing on GitHub, it's a lot less like write the entire thing to do this thing and more like fix this thing and fix that. So we're really close, but we didn't want to ship something that you couldn't start using right away, right? Which is why we made the decision to move this .NET MAUI as a GA product to 2022. And I think for me, the things that I'm most excited about with this is that we're getting the ecosystem ready to roll, which is all of you folks. I mean, not just control vendors and people who maintain libraries and maintain things that are fundamental to the Xamarin ecosystem today, but also just our community, giving you folks a little bit more time to play with it, to feel comfortable with it. So on day one, you can start giving talks and you can say, this is what I built with Maui, instead of, you getting to try it the first time with everybody else, right? So we really want to make this a clean, perfect experience. And you probably know from our themes of 2016 through 2019 Xamarin, like we were really just trying to make everything more performant, more stable, better, all those things. And so we didn't want Maui to feel like a regression. So that is why there is a delay. I don't want it to be like, oh, like we bit off more than we can chew and we're idiots. I think it was a lot of like random things happening, the world happening, and also us just wanting to do what's best for all of you. And we are very lucky that people, I guess lucky, but also we have a great community. So that's probably the reason. People have responded to this delay news really well. And people are still trying out. We have more people using Maui today than we did a week ago, a month ago, 6 months ago. So we actually have people shipping Maui apps in the App Store at this point. So we're getting there. Like we're really close. So I'm actually very excited for what's going to happen and what we're going to ship and what we're going to see all you folks do in a couple months. And then, yeah, so I wanted to show some stats. I know this is kind of sad. Like it's kind of like a farewell to Xamarin. I asked if we could like keep the monkey and people were like, we have a .NET bot. It's also cute. And I was like, you're right. But what am I going to do with all my monkeys? We have had a great time pumping out Xamarin content, especially in the past like 3 or 4 years. I mean, over 200 episodes of the Xamarin Show. That's crazy. Like that's one every like 2 or 3 a week for the past 3 or 4 years, which is just, is that the math? Two a week for the past 2 or 3 years. Yeah, something like that. Make some adjustments for holidays. We're almost at episode 100 of the Xamarin podcast, which is migrated over to .NET MAUI. Dave and I have been there for most of 20 community stand-ups, which are always a good time. Please always come join us. Let me know what blogs you want us to share. It's where we share stuff that you all are doing and writing. And then, the chat's going off. Let me make sure I read. Yeah, I know the monkeys. I know. Will there be a Maui show? Oh, yes. The Xamarin show is going to be the .NET MAUI show soon enough. Don't worry. And we've actually already surpassed the amount of stars on the Xamarin Forms repo in now the MAUI repo. So thanks. We've pretty much doubled. That's pretty cool. We still have a bunch of issues in the MAUI repo that we're also going to deal with, but less so than Xamarin Forms. So that's pretty good. Definitely not because it's not shipped yet, right? But we've had a really good run as Xamarin, and I think that when we do ship MAUI GA, it is really going to solidify our place in this overall .NET story. We're not adjacent anymore. We're not MonoTouch that became Xamarin and Xamarin Studio that turned into Visual Studio for Mac. And this team that got acquired and worked next to .NET and kind of tried to just figure out where they fit in with all these things. Like, we are really, truly, fundamentally part of .NET and part of the meetings that happen multiple times a week where they make decisions about the framework and the runtime. And, we're one of the first optional workloads you can install with .NET. We use the .NET template engine now. We're on their GitHub. Our themes are tracked alongside the .NET themes. Our tooling has become our tooling team, actually where they sit in the Microsoft organization, is now part of the just overarching Visual Studio tooling team. XAML tools also now just basically work with MAUI as it is. We don't build things after the fact anymore. There's plenty of experiments in the works. I know we talk about things like the graphics, Comet, MVU, blah, 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 blah. And of course, we're already planning .NET 7. There's more. There will always be more. Very exciting. We have to ship our stuff first, but, we're talking. So it has really been exciting to see kind of how much over the past, I've been here for 3.5 years almost, but over the past really year and a half, we have been able to become part of the .NET family formally, not just the cousin. I think we're a sibling now. We've moved past cousin territory. We're invited to all the holidays and birthdays. So that's exciting. So this has been a really amazing Xamarin Expert Day. And it is kind of sad that it is the last one because now it is .NET MAUI Expert Day. And that's what we're going to have next year. We're not going to be talking about Xamarin anymore. It's just all going to be MAUI all the time. We're all going to be on the beach. We're going to hold it in person, right, Gerald? We're going to hold it in person in MAUI. And we'll all hang out there. But that's it. I hope you enjoyed my storytelling down memory lane. Thank you all for your contributions and supporting us the past couple of years, especially with all this craziness. I'm very excited to see what we do as a community in just a few short months when we ship this thing for real. So thank you.